Alright, so today we're going to be looking at equations of circles. And these are your 10-8 notes, last notes of the chapter. So the equation of a circle in standard form looks like the following. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals, whoops, I tell you I'd make a terrible dentist. Whoops, sorry about that. R squared. So you actually have two squared terms. You have an x squared term and a y squared term. So anytime you see an x squared term and a y squared term, it's highly possible it's a circle. Not always, but it's highly possible. Where HK is the center of the circle and R is the radius. So here's the deal. Look at whatever is happening to x and whatever is happening to y. So whatever is happening to x, that's the x value of the center. Notice that this is a negative h and this is showing as a positive h. So this sign in the middle might be a positive sign or it might be a negative sign. And this, in the standard form, the general form of your equation, it always shows as a negative, but this could be x plus 2. If it's x plus 2, change the sign of the plus 2 to a negative. That means your x value of the center of the circle is going to be a negative 2. So just note that we always change the sign of whatever you see in here. So if it's a minus 2, this would be a positive 2. If it's a plus 2, this would be a negative 2. Same thing goes here for y. Whatever is being added or subtracted to y becomes the y value of the center of your circle. And again, change the sign. So usually whatever's inside parentheses, we end up changing the signs. And then notice that this is r squared here. How do we go from r squared to r? Square root. So you're going to take whatever the square root is of here, and that becomes your radius. It might be a nice pretty number like 16. So if r squared is 16, then you know that your radius, square root of 16, is 4. But if r squared is 20, you're going to have to take the square root of 20 and simplify that. So it's not always going to be a pretty number. So let's look at some somewhat simple, we're just going to take that general formula and just start plugging stuff in. So for instance, we've got x minus something squared plus y minus something squared equals something squared. So I'm just going to do this really for the first one because there's not a whole lot of room on here. So notice that your center is 5, 3. So that means that 5 is your h. That was a terrible h. Let's try that again. 5 is your h and 3 is your k. What's the 2 stand for? Your r. So I know that 2 is going to go here where r is squared. And I'm going to put my 5 in here, so I have a minus 5 and a minus 3. So note that we went from a positive 5 to a negative 5. We went from a positive 3 to a negative 3. And this is almost in full form, but we have to actually square out that radius. So your actual answer to this one would look like x minus 5 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4. So what happens when you have a negative value? So when you have a negative value, we still have x, but instead, if my x value is negative 1, what do I put here? Change its sign. So negative 1 becomes a positive 1. Well, that's, again, I'm having issues today. So that becomes a positive 1, and then we're going to square it. And then plus y. So we have a positive 7. What am I going to put in with the y? Negative 7. and then square it, equals, tell me what 14 squared is, because we want to actually square this. What's 14 squared? 196, right? All right, so number 3 is slightly different. What's the difference between 1 and 2 and number 3? What's the difference here? What do you see that's different between these two? They give you the diameter. So what do I really want? So if the diameter is 18, what is the radius? 9, right? All right, so then you go ahead and set up your equation for number 3. What'd you put in with the x? A plus 2, because we changed the sign, right? What'd you put in with the y? A plus 11, again we changed the sign. And then what is 9 squared? 81. All right, you do number 4. What do you think we do with a 0? What do you think is going to happen with a 0? What happens if I put a 0 in here? Right, what's that? Don't we know what x minus 0 is? Isn't it just x squared? So anytime you have a 0 in place of an x or a y, then you just have an x squared or just a y squared. So don't write x minus 0 in parentheses squared. So for this one, you're just having an x squared for the x value. So then you do the rest of it. So what'd you put in with the y? A what? Minus 9. And what is 16 squared? 256. Then number 5, here's the only issue with number 5. So I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay with your x and your y on number 5, right? So what are you putting in for your x? Everybody. Everybody. Oh, that wasn't quite everybody. Where's your table on all this? I mean, what are you putting in for your y? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, whoops. Oh, hold that thought. Oh, gracious, I took all that away too. Hold that thought. X squared plus y minus 9 squared equals 256. Why did I just erase everything? What did I realize? What's your y going to be? Yeah, it's just y squared. So plus y squared is equal to. Then for this one, they gave you your radius this time, didn't they? We just want to square this. So what happens when you square a radical? You get just the number under the radical, so you get just 47. So you do 6 all by yourself. So share with people at your table what you got for 6. So tell me if this is what you have. X minus 15 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals, if you square this, you get 158. So the question begs, how did I miss this in Algebra 1-2, right? How hard is that? You just have to know the standard equation of a circle. So you are responsible for knowing that. All right, so what if you're given a graph? Can you write the equation of the circle? So all I have to do is find the center. So all I have to do is find my center, right? And all I have to do is find my radius. If I have the center and the radius, I have everything I need to write that equation. So what is the center of this circle? What is that point right there? What is that? 3, -2. And then to find your radius, just go from that center and pick a vertical or a horizontal distance to the outside of the circle. So just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So isn't our radius equal to 5? Can't you write the equation of the circle now? So just do it. Do you agree? Yes or no? Yep. Okay. So then they do get just a little bit more difficult, because then they're going to start to give you just either the center and a point on the circle, or they're going to give you 2 points on the circle. And so you're going to have to use some prior knowledge to find some things that are missing. So if they give you the center, haven't they given you H and K? So we can actually write that part. What are we missing? The radius. So I like to just draw a little picture of what they've given me. And so, for instance, let's just say that right here is that center, and then this would be a point on the circle. So this point is 7, 4, and this point here is 9, 10, let's just say, for chuckle's sake. Right? How do I find a distance from those points there? How do I find the distance from 2 points in the coordinate grid? Isn't there something that you can use to find that? What is that? The distance between 2 points in the coordinate grid. The distance formula. Do we remember what the distance formula is? You should, because you're going to have to know it. It won't be given to you. So take your x values, so x sub 1 minus y sub 1, it doesn't matter what order they come in, square it, plus, oops, there I already had a mistake. How about x sub 2? And then y sub 1 minus y sub 2, it doesn't matter what order you put those in. So just take the difference between your x's and square them, the difference between your y's and square them, add them together and take the square root. So that's what we're going to do first. First and foremost, we're going to find the distance between the 2 points, because that's going to give us our radius. Alright, so this is going to be x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. So x sub 1 is 9, x sub 2 is 7, y sub 1 is 10, and y sub 2 is 4. So this ends up being 9 minus 7 is 2 squared, which is 4, plus 10 minus 4 is 6, squared is 36, which is the square root of 40. Is that a nice perfect square? But that doesn't matter, because our distance is the square root of 40. That's what our r is. So don't simplify that. So our r, this is equal to our r. What do we want? What do we want? Do we want r in our formula, or do we want r squared? R squared. So we want r squared. So r squared is equal to the square root of 40 squared. So what's our r squared going to end up being? just 40. So when you write your equation of your circle, you've got, so this is step 2. You've got x minus 9, because we're going to change the signs of our center, plus y minus 10 squared equals our r squared is just 40. And this is our equation right there. So you do number 9 by yourself. So number 9 is identical to number 8. So share your answer with those at your table. So one of you is going to tell me what the answer is, so I suggest you share your answer at the table. All right, so here we go. Isaac, what's your answer?
X minus 1.
Listen, x minus 1
Plus y plus 5 equals 388.
equals what?
388.
Where'd you get 388? Did you do the distance formula?
Yes.
I think you made an error on your distance. Plus, make sure that your x and your y are squared. Whoops. So for here, you've got 1 minus a negative 7, so you want to add the opposite and make that a plus plus. And then over here, you've got a negative 5 minus a negative 13, so you're going to make that a plus plus. So 1 plus 7 is 8. A negative 5 plus 13 is 8, so you have 2 8 squareds. 64 and 64 gives you 128. And so we're going to leave that as 128. We're not going to simplify it because we really want r squared. So your r squared ends up being 128. Did you mess up on your minus minus? Yeah. And so then change your signs of your center. Your center is 1, negative 5, so we get negative 1, positive 5. Make sure these are squared up here. And then we just had the 128. Will that be on your test? Absolutely. You're going to have a question where, just like, 1 through 6, you'll have a question or two from there. You might have a graph where you have to write the equation, and you're going to have a question where you have a center and a point, or maybe just 2 points on the circle. So let's flip this to the second side so we can look at. So I'm going to leave 10 and 11 for you to do on your own if you want more practice, because they're essentially the same as what we've done. So then here, given the circumference and area, how do we find things? So let's look at number 12. So remember, your circumference is pi d, or circumference is 2 pi r, whereas your area is equal to pi r squared. You have to know those. So they give us a center, which is our h and our k, and they give us our circumference. The reason why they're giving you circumference or area is so that we have a way to find radius. Because given the center, all I need is radius for my equation. So if they gave me 6 pi, that's my circumference in exact form, which one would be better, this one or this one? Isn't it easier to see, I mean, what's the 6 on here? Isn't the 6 your diameter? Because if I did pi d, wouldn't the 6, we already have the pi, right? So there's the pi. Wouldn't the 6 have to be the diameter? So that means that your diameter is 6. What's your radius? 3. Now you can write the equation of your circle. So you've got x, change your signs, plus 1 squared, plus y, change your signs, minus 4 squared, equals, what's 3 squared? 9. So that's what we're looking for, is that equation. So number 13 would be identical, wouldn't it? Isn't that your diameter? What would be your radius on this one? So if your diameter is 17, what would be your radius? 8.5? Yeah. And then don't worry about that. You're going to end up squaring it. So you just do 8.5 times 8.5, and that gets you your answer, right? And so we can quickly write the equation to that one. So we've got x, change your signs, minus 9 squared, plus y, change your signs, minus 12 squared. What is 8.5 squared? It's only 2 point what? 25. And that's fine. You can have a decimal in that case. Leave it. And there's your answer for that one. Well, what do we do if they give you area? So if they give you area, essentially, you're going to set the 16 pi equal to pi r squared. Right? They give you area, 16 pi, set that equal to pi r squared. Get the r by itself. Wouldn't you divide this by pi, and wouldn't you divide this by pi? Aren't you left with 16? I'll do it up here. Aren't you left with 16 equals r squared? How do you find r? Square root. But seriously, don't we really just care about r squared? We could find r, but don't we really only care about r squared? So I'd just leave that. You just found what you needed, r squared. And so now you can write your equation. X, change your signs, plus 8 squared, plus y, change your signs, plus 11 squared, equals, and we already found r squared to be 16. We don't want to square that. So make sure that you're aware of what you have. If you write everything out, you can always go back and check. What did I get? Oh yeah, r squared. And so then 15 would be identical. We're not going to do that one. So any questions on that before we do the last few? The last few are easy as well. You're just going backwards. They're going to give you the equation of the circle, and you have to write out the center and the radius. So same thing. Look at what they gave you. Isn't this my H and isn't that my K? Aren't we going to change the signs? So what's the center on this one? What's the X value? 5. What's the Y value? 1. Easy, right? What's the square root of 64? That's our radius, 8. Your square root may not be nice and perfect, so look at the next one. Your center, change the signs, are going to be -7, +2. But if you take the square root of 324, does that give you a nice perfect square? Oh, it does, 36. However, okay, so that gives you R is 36, right? What are they asking for? Yeah, they're asking for diameter. So what would your diameter be? Do we double that or divide it by 2? You double it. So what is it? 36 doubled is 72. So that's how we get 72. So don't, yes. You all told me it was 36. Oh, you said 18. Oh, well, see. I'm relying on y'all. Sorry. All right, so your radius was 18 when you took the square root? Okay. Then double that, what do you get? Okay. That I'll agree with you on. So then that means I need to change this to 36. All right, you do 18 and 19 on your own. All right, so here are your answers. Let's talk about them. Did you get 0 here for your X value in the center on 18 and then change the sign from positive to -10? When you take the square root of the decimal, you get 6.5. Double that, you get 13 because they're asking for diameter again, right? However, when you look at 19, change your signs, you get 6 and -11, but when you take the square root of 58, that is your radius, remember. And then you have to simplify that if you can, but it divides out to 2 times 29, both of which are prime. So you cannot simplify the square root of 58. If you could, you would, but you can't, so you're not going to. Are there any questions? If you want to do the challenge, the answers are online underneath notes, and you can do that, but we're not going to do that during regular notes today.